In this video, I challenge myself to survive 100 days in hardcore Minecraft version 1.18, as well as accomplish the following goals: become a town mayor, explore a lush cave, get full netherite gear, and kill the dragon. This video took me way longer to complete than my normal Minecraft ones, so please consider leaving a like or comment to show your appreciation, or even subscribe to see more content like this. The end of the 100 days got pretty sketchy. Will you be able to stick around to see what happens? So right after spawning in, I immediately punched down a tree and made my first wooden tools. We had a lot to do and not much time to do it. My main priorities were finding food, some sheep so I could make a bed, and hopefully finding a village. I picked up some sweet berries and killed a couple of cows and sheep. Finally, I found a third piece of wool, which was very hard since sheep blend in with the snow. I made a bed and went to sleep as quickly as possible before our adventure got cut short by mobs. On day 1, I continued looking for a village. Our search took us high and low. The cool thing about 1.18 is that with the new terrain, you can climb up a mountain and see for miles around. After quite a bit of searching, I finally found a taiga village. I was home. Immediately, I put some of my raw steak on the campfire and started looting the houses. There weren't many chests, but I did manage to get some awesome loot from a toolsmith, including my first diamond and some iron gear. I made it my new mission to protect this village and all its occupants as its mayor. So I rang the bell way more times than I needed to, and luckily all the villagers went into the same house. I guess they figured there was protection in numbers. Then I found the biggest building in town and claimed it as my own. That's one of the perks of being the mayor, I guess. I put down my crafting table and made some chests to store my loot in. Then I remembered that I left some meat in the campfire and went to go get it. The sky was getting dark, so I went as fast as I could to retrieve my juicy steaks and put the rest of my meat on to slowly roast over the glowing coals. Then I went back to my new house, put down my bed, and called it a night. On the morning of day 2, it was raining and snowing, so I decided to look around the village, taking a survey of my new property. I saw a really cool cave system and a waterfall, but not much else in the immediate area. I then cooked some raw mutton and strategically placed torches so the ice in the lake would melt and I could plant some sugarcane. That would come in handy later. Since it was still raining and I was very low on resources, I decided to build a mine shaft in the floor of my house. Soon I ran into some coal and was able to make some torches. I also used one of the 2 iron I got from my looting campaign to make a shield, which is something that I often forget to do in hardcore. These would be really important because I then ran into a cave system. I fought my first mob, kinda, and I also got plenty of iron and copper, as well as a little bit of redstone and lapis. Not too bad for my first caving trip, but if I was going to keep exploring the caves, I'd need to get better protected. On days 3 and 4, I decided that I'd risked enough down in the caves and went back up to smelt my iron. I made an iron shirt and trousers, and then upgraded my tools. I have to admit that I was looking pretty good. Now that I was fully armored up, I went outside and expanded my sweetberry wall. I also chopped some more wood and expanded my sugarcane area. I heard a wandering trader come through town, but aside from the free leads and leather, his trades were pretty terrible. On day 5, I decided it was probably a good idea to grow some wheat, so I started a small wheat farm near the village and then headed back down to the mines because I was determined to find some sweet shiny diamonds. Instead of using the tunnels that I explored before, I decided the best bet would be to go down much deeper. I went all the way down to Y level -59, right above bedrock. After just a few minutes, I actually found my very first diamonds. Even though there were only 2, that would be enough for a diamond pickaxe, so I went back up to my house to craft one. After making myself a few more iron pickaxes, after all, I did graduate from the Iron Age, I went back down and spent all of day 6 and the following night strip mining. Above me, I could hear a bat dying in bubbling lava, so I was on edge until I couldn't hear it anymore. I ended up finding 11 more diamonds, as well as a ton of other good resources. At the beginning of day 7, I decided I was getting a little bored of mining, especially without Fortune 3. What I needed to work on now was getting leather, which meant going to look for cows. I took a bed from one of the village houses because I didn't know how long it would take me to find them, which marked the start of the purple bed story. I was getting a little low on food, so I killed some sheep and pigs. By day 8, I still hadn't found any cows, and I was worried that I was getting a little bit lost. One thing I didn't have any problem finding was wolves. Too bad I didn't have any bones yet. Finally, I found some cows, but there was a snowstorm and mobs were starting to spawn all around me. Luckily, I was able to sleep through it. I got a couple of cows on leads and tried to find my way back home. One of my cows tried to end himself in a berry bush, but he was lucky that I was there to save him. I was really taking this whole mayor thing to heart. It took me a little while to find my way back, but as I rounded the corner of the frozen river on day 9, I saw my village and was filled with absolute joy. I made a makeshift pen for the cows and got to work on something a little more permanent for them since there was still plenty of daylight left. I decided to go with deep slate, mainly because I had plenty of it to spare from all the mining and I didn't feel like gathering extra resources. I built into day 10 and had a little bit of a hard time getting both of the cows into their new pen. I spent the rest of the day working on my wheat farm, breeding my first baby cow, and thinking about ways to better defend my village. On the bright and fairly cold morning of day 11, I continued working on expanding my wheat farm, breeding my cows, and getting more sugarcane going. This continued through day 13. I'd forgotten how long this part of the game can take, but I was extra careful on the last day, because if something bad was going to happen this early in the game, it would happen on day 13. So I'll be honest, by day 14, I was getting a little tired of being Farmer Tater. I wanted to spend time improving the village. The first step of this was to chop down all the trees so I could see what I was working with. I continued chopping down trees until day 15, and as the sun was setting and spruce saplings were raining from the sky, I began to come up with an idea of how I could build a wall around the village. You see, I'd picked up a ton of saplings by this point, and I had a feeling that the sweetberry bush wall I was making just wasn't going to cut it. Instead, on day 16, I planted spruce trees around the border of the town. When they grew into trees, they would be the perfect barrier to keep hostile mobs out of the town. I didn't have any bone meal yet, so hopefully it wouldn't take too long for them to grow naturally. On day 17, once again I was getting bored with what I was doing. That happens to me quite often, by the way, and I noticed that my supply of iron was getting pretty low, so I decided another trip down to the mines was in order. I ran into a cave, and while I was lighting it up, I found a block of iron ore. That was pretty cool. Right after that, a creeper snuck up on me and I barely made it out alive. I really need to remember to equip my shield when I'm doing this sort of thing. Suddenly, I started hearing skeletons, like a ton of skeletons. There was definitely a skeleton spawner down here somewhere. I just had to figure out how to get to it. Finally, I found the dungeon. I had no other choice but to go in. It got pretty hairy a couple of times, but in the end, we were victorious. I could turn this into an XP farm, which would make life much easier once I got an enchanting set up. On day 18, I tended my crops and bred more cows. Then I had an idea of what I could do with all the extra seeds I was getting from the wheat. I made a very simple composter setup that would provide bone meal. That would help quite a bit when it came to growing our tree wall. On day 19, I made some more storage and then went back down to the skeleton spawner to turn it into a mob farm. While lighting up the area, I found some more iron and even a few diamonds. I wouldn't be able to do fall damage for the skeletons yet because I didn't have any soul sand. I continued working on the XP farm until day 23, but at one point I noticed a glow squid had spawned and fallen into the kill area. That was pretty weird. At the end of day 23, I had a functional mob farm, 30 levels, plenty of bones, and finally a bow. I got to test it out when I got back up to the surface and killed a skeleton that was waiting to ambush me. On a cold and rainy day 24, I did my chores around town like normal, tried and failed to use bone meal to make the tree wall grow faster, and noticed that I was completely out of coal when I ran out of torches trying to light things up. Instead of going down to the mines to get more coal like a responsible person, I spent days 25 through 28 trying to upgrade my storage situation. Unfortunately, that also meant that I needed to build a bigger building to put it all in. I started out by knocking down my current village house, and then I got to work with something a little bit bigger. I didn't plan the build at all, so it took quite a bit of time to get it to look decent. And since all you've heard these last 8 minutes or so is my voice going on, I figured I'd give you a little bit of a break and showcase some of my favorite time-lapse music. Well, I hope you liked our little log cabin build and the tunes, because on day 29, I focused mainly on sorting my items into my new storage area in the basement and other odds and ends around the house. For For day 30, I shifted to working on getting my enchantment setup going. I harvested some wheat, bred some cows, killed some cows, and mined sugarcane. I was able to get everything I needed, except I was short just one piece of obsidian. I eventually found a lava source block in a cave, and I used that to get the final ingredient for my enchanting table. On day 31, I was ready to get to enchanting. I decided the best place to put my enchanting table would be over by the skeleton farm. That way I could sit there and grind away as needed to get the good enchantment. I finally got everything situated and then realized I'd forgotten lapis. Rookie mistake. I went back and got all the lapis I'd collected to that point and headed back. I got a Fortune 3 pickaxe right away, which was exactly what I was looking for. Now I was ready to go back down to my strip mine for more diamonds. I also desperately needed iron and coal. I mined through day 33, but I came back up with a little bit of coal, plenty of iron, and 36 diamonds. That would be plenty for my initial kit, but I need more to max out my gear before fighting the dragon. I waited for the iron to smelt so I could make an anvil, and then went back to my XP farm. The first thing I'd have to do is combine my 2 pickaxes to give it efficiency 5. It still needed mending, but that would have to come later. This part of the game is always a grind for me, even when I have a more efficient XP farm. Cycling through all the trades just takes a long time. I ended up with some decent enchants, and I have to admit, I look pretty good in shiny diamond armor. Now that I had some pretty good looking gear, I needed to get mending. The first step was to release some of the villagers from the house that I trapped them in when I first came into town. That ended up being a bit of an issue, especially since 3 of them beelined right into the cow pen. I still had 3 or 4 left, so those guys would have to fend for themselves. I managed to trap 2 of the remaining villagers into separate houses. I made one into a Fletcher for the stick trade and spent way too long on the other trying to get as low of a mending trade as possible. Unfortunately, I wouldn't have time to do any zombification and curing to get those sweet discounts. I finally got a mending trade for 14 emeralds and immediately locked it in. There was one thing I was low on though, and that was sticks. Luckily, I was surrounded by trees and it wouldn't take me too long to stock up. The first thing I put mending on was my pickaxe, of course. Then I spent the rest of that day and the next chopping down trees, waiting for the Fletcher to refresh his trades, and buying up mending books. On day 45, I finally had enough mending books for my armor and sword, so I went back down to my storage room and got to work. I waited to put it on my helmet until after I got it enchanted. No time for that right now though. I was ready to prepare for my first trip into the Nether. The first step would be to get enough obsidian to build a portal. That meant I had to go back down to my mines and find a lava lake. Then on a rainy day 46, by the way, why does it always seem to be raining here? Anyway, I went outside after gathering all the obsidian I would need, found a decent spot to put the portal, and lit it. This was it. The riskiest part of the challenge so far was about to take place. I was going into the Nether. I had 3 main things that I needed to get from the Nether: blaze rods, ender pearls, and netherite. I spawned in the basalt deltas, which was a pretty bad start. I somehow needed to find a nether fortress, and from where I was, everything about this place wanted to kill me. I couldn't believe my luck when I saw a fortress right outside of the tunnel I was digging. Unfortunately, there was a huge gap between where I was and where I wanted to go, and I was too afraid to bridge with all those blaze trying to shoot fireballs at me. I would have to go around. As I was tunneling to an area that met up with a fortress, I accidentally fell down a hole to the ground like 25 blocks down. I was so happy that I put feather falling on my boots before coming. I pillared back up to my tunnel and continued on. Before long, I made it to the fortress, and the real fun was about to begin. I almost forgot to equip my shield, and there were blazes waiting for me. I made my way through the fortress, taking out everything that got in the way. I found the blaze spawner and dug a hole underneath where I could lure and kill the blaze as safely as possible. I still got hit plenty of times though, and when I got 23 blaze rods, I decided to get out of Dodge. It was time to go back to my portal and then move on to the next phase of my Nether adventure. After going back to my base to clear out some of my inventory, I went back to the Nether and remembered seeing a crimson forest on my way to the fortress. I decided to go back to that area because my last 2 Nether tasks, getting ender pearls and mining netherite, could be done there. I didn't have enough gold for piglin trading yet, so I headed deeper underground. It took all the way to day 53 to get enough ancient debris for 3 pieces of armor and my sword, but once I got it, I headed back up to the surface to find a piglin. I spent pretty much all of day 54 trading all of my gold to a piglin that I trapped in a hole. I was worried that I would run out and not get enough ender pearls, but at the last second, I got my 16th pearl. I also scored some other goodies from the piglin. I actually forgot that I would need gold for the netherite, but luckily I found a vein close to the tunnel going back to the portal. Our nether expedition was a great success, and now it was time to go back to the overworld. As soon as I got home on day 55, I got to work creating netherite ingots. Then I went to my smithing table, and you don't know how good it felt to transform my OP diamond armor into really OP netherite. I upgraded my sword and all the armor I had aside from my helmet. I was off to a really good start. Now that I was all handsome, I figured it was about time to start working on the village again. I harvested some wheat, expanded the wheat farm, chopped down some trees, tore down that little blacksmith lean-to thing, and fixed the paths up just a little. My tree wall wasn't growing as fast as I would have liked, but I wasn't seeing very many hostile mobs around town, so I wasn't stressing it too much. Still though, I was worried about defenses. On day 60, I thought it would be a good idea to get some guard dogs for the village. I went down to the skeleton XP farm, gathered some bones, and headed off into the woods just beyond the village, where I remembered seeing some wolves before. I climbed up to the top of a hill to get a better look, and right there on the other side was exactly what I was looking for, a lone wolf. There had to be others around, and I would need at least 2 in order to get my army of guard dogs going. I looked all around and even found one of those Arctic foxes, but it took me a while to find another wolf. Finally, I found and tamed wolf number 2, and I guess I was pretty lucky because immediately afterwards I found an igloo. This one had a secret chamber underneath, and I went down to find a golden apple, splash potion of weakness, and other goodies. I didn't really need to hang out there any longer, so I got my pups and headed back home. On the way, I found another wolf, which was pretty sweet, but I was getting really nervous because the sun was going down. I got back to my house right at nightfall, told my dogs to sit, and went to bed. For day 61, I wanted to continue working on my defenses, and I figured what better way to protect a town than to build a guard tower. I decided to put it somewhere close to the center of the village and work with some of the materials that I'd already been using so it matched the theme. All around, it didn't seem too bad, and at the top, I could definitely see for miles around, ready to snipe the enemy with my bow at a moment's notice. Then I put in the finishing touch, which was the ability to sound the alarm if needed. It wasn't my prettiest build by a long shot, but it would definitely fit the bill. On day 63, I focused on some odds and ends around the base, like filling in some holes, breeding my dogs, and breeding my cows. Yep, those villagers are still watching over the livestock. But then on day 64, I decided that I didn't like the fact that I didn't really have a full set of netherite gear. I spent quite a bit of time trading sticks to one villager so I can get mending books from the other, and then I went back down to the XP farm and crafted a diamond pick, shovel, and axe to enchant. Many skeletons died in the process of getting this stuff, so at this time, everyone should put an F in the comments in their memory. On day 71, I finished combining all my new enchanted diamond gear and adding mending, so now it was time to get some more of that sweet ancient debris. I headed back down to the nether to make another strip mine. I spent all of days 72 through 76 in the nether mining for ancient debris. I was really worried that I was wasting my time, especially since it was really slow going at first. I needed 20 debris in order to fully netheritize myself, and when I finally got the last piece, I threw a little dance party. And on day 77, I left the nether for what would hopefully be the last time, and got to work turning the ancient debris into netherite scraps, and then the netherite scraps into netherite ingots. I was finally ready to completely cover myself in netherite, including all my tools. As I stood on top of my pumpkins and looked at myself with the village in the background, I was feeling very powerful. I decided then and there that I was finally ready to explore the big cave near my base and see if I could find a lush cave. It's 118 after all, and that was one of my goals from the start. I headed down into the cave and immediately I realized it was an ambush. I quickly dispatched some mobs and started to explore. There was indeed a lush cave at the bottom, and luckily there were waterfalls to take me down safely. It all looked so awesome, and I wish that I could have built my base down here. I saw an enderman and killed it to hopefully get another pearl, but no luck. I also saw one of those dripstone caves, and it reminded me of taking a tour through some caverns on vacation when I was a kid. This update was so cool. I managed to catch a couple of axolotls while I was down there as well, but it was time to head back home. Then on day 78, I thought it would be a good idea to make a little home for my yellow axolotls. I used a little bit of moss, some mossy cobblestone, and azalea trees. It looked really good, and I decided to name the axolotls Colonel Mustard and Banana. How do you like that? The next day, I worked more on my crop farm. One of the zombies in the cave dropped a carrot, so I wanted to make sure to plant that as well. I got all of my farmland filled in and even used some bone meal to get my carrot patch going. As the sun set, what? On day 79, I was feeling fantastic about the improvements that we'd made to this town. I started day 80 by placing the spore blossom I'd gotten in the lush cave on the ceiling of my house. That would give it some nice ambiance, and hopefully it would give me some luck in the journey to come. It works like that, right? Then I went outside to slaughter some livestock. I wanted to make sure I had plenty of protein and animal fats to take with me. After all, it was a new year, and I have to assume that even Minecraft characters have heard of keto. I accidentally hit one of the villagers with the ferocious swing of my blade, but I figured it was his fault for getting stuck in there to begin with. He was a dimwit anyway, so I doubt he even realized it happened. I went inside to cook my beef and made as many golden apples as I could. I also crafted my eyes of ender and brought spare blaze rods just in case I stumbled across any endermen along the way. On the morning of day 81, I grabbed my 3 stacks of juicy steak and filled up 2 water buckets. Or at least that's what I meant to do, but I forgot. I then took some time to look around the town, visiting Colonel Mustard and Banana, the villagers, the cows, getting a look from my guard tower, and finally saying goodbye to my dogs. They'd done a good job as our little army of protectors, so I made sure to reward them with some raw meat before leaving. Since I was on my way to fight the dragon, this might be the last time I'd get to see them. I carved and collected a jack-o'-lantern, threw my first eye, and started the journey. I didn't run into anything too interesting, and I just kept walking and throwing my eyes of ender until I was able to triangulate the directions. I got really lucky because I only had 2 of the 16 eyes break when I threw them. The sun was going down, so I plopped down my purple bed, I swear I found it that way, and went to sleep. On day 83, I started to dig down, but I quickly ran into a huge cave. There were 3 creepers waiting for me at the bottom, and even though there was a waterfall that I could use to get down safely, I had to be ready to fight right away. I got down and somehow took fall damage in the middle of the waterfall, but I couldn't think about that right now. My priorities had to be protecting myself and lighting things up. As soon as I felt like I was making headway with the torches, I'd find creepers and zombies chasing me. I finally had them all dispatched, and even though I saw a few endermen down in the cave, I had enough eyes and allowed them to live another day. You always have to leave someone alive to tell the story. I killed the last remaining skeletons and even shot a bat just to prove my prowess with the bow. I needed to get back to work though. I threw another eye of ender because I wanted to make sure I was on the right track. That's when I realized I completely forgot to get water. Hopefully I'd run into an underground lake while trying to find the stronghold. And on day 84, I found the stronghold. The problem was that I still hadn't found water for my water buckets. I guess I'd have to search the stronghold for the end portal anyway, so I crossed my fingers and jumped down. What do you know? The first room I jumped down to in had a fountain. I filled it one of my buckets and continued with my search. I found the end portal within minutes, but not water for my other bucket. I broke the silverfish spawner, wrote down the coordinates, and kept looking. After a few minutes, I found a library. The first chest didn't have anything good, but the one upstairs had an awesome enchanted book. I really didn't need it for the quest we were currently undertaking, but I took it anyway. I left the library and went down the hall, where I saw a room off to the side with at least 2 creepers in it. I wasn't going to go in at first, but I really needed another water bucket, and I was desperate. After I murdered a zombie family and found another room with a chest that had 3 diamonds and an ender pearl, which is pretty awesome by the way. Shortly afterward though, I climbed up a ladder and found another chest without anything useful. But I did notice that there was a dungeon in one of the corners. I'm assuming that's where all those zombies were coming from. I took a saddle out of the chest and left everything else. I finally found a water source block in a cave under a stronghold after searching the entire thing multiple times. I scooped it up and now I just needed to find my way back to the end portal room. It was a good thing because I was getting dangerously low on torches and there was no coal to be found anywhere. On day 90, I finally found my way back to the end portal and got myself situated. First, I got rid of all the lava and made sure the portal room had enough light. Then I put down my bed and made a chest to store everything I wasn't planning on taking with me. Then after a fair bit of stalling, I lit the end portal and stepped inside. I was super lucky that I got one of those safe end spawn rooms. Overhead, the dragon was attacking endermen mercilessly and pushing them into the void. They didn't stand a chance. I picked a random direction and started digging a stairway up. As soon as I broke the surface, I saw the ender dragon and he immediately shot some dragon's breath on me. I got out, went to a safe place, and proceeded to throw my carved pumpkin into the void. It was tradition after all. Now it was time to get started on this fight. You see, there are all these obsidian pillars with end crystals at the top, which the dragon uses to heal itself. I'd have to take out all of those crystals before trying to kill the dragon. Luckily, there's a quick and maybe cheaty way to get the end crystal surrounded by iron bars where you just shoot into the corner of the pillar. It took a couple of tries, but the trick worked. Then I continued to shoot the end crystals with my bow, all while avoiding dragon's breath and trying my hardest not to look at any endermen. I missed several times with my bow and even thought about pillaring up to get some of the crystals, but eventually I got them all. Did I say I was good with the bow? Maybe that's just with bats. When all the crystals were out, it was time to start attacking the dragon directly. There's basically two ways to do this. Shoot at it with your bow when it's flying, and slice at its head and toes with your sword when it's perched. I like to do a combination of both. Another thing I like to do is dig a hole right under the bedrock perch to use as a safe spot when I accidentally look at the enderman or I need to heal. Using this alternating method, it's actually pretty easy to kill a dragon, even in hardcore mode. The key is to take your time and stay calm. Trying to anticipate the dragon's flight path while chucking arrows at it can be pretty annoying. Then when you're attacking with your sword, the key thing is to avoid going anywhere near its wings. If you do, they have a tendency to throw you up in the air. I had my water bucket ready just in case. If you go for the head though, you need to watch out for the dragon's breath. So I continued alternating between bow shots and sword attacks, and I was making pretty good progress. Then I must have looked at an enderman, so I jumped down into my bunker. He was pretty smart and knew to stay out of arm's reach, so I shot an arrow at him. I never heard from that enderman again. If you're ever going to use this bunker method, make sure you have multiple exits so you aren't stuck waiting for dragon's breath to go away. The dragon was getting low on health, and I was getting really good hits in with my bow. After smacking his toes a few more times, the dragon was almost dead. I got a couple more bow shots, and just as it was coming down to perch again, I landed the final blow. You can go ahead and say that I have bad bow skills, but keep in mind that I didn't have to eat any golden apples or have to try out my MLG water bucket skills at all during this fight. That sounds pretty pro to me. I was so excited when the dragon finally died that I yelled so loudly my dog came into the room to make sure I was okay. Fortunately for you, my microphone was muted at the time. I was running around picking up all the XP and saw that there was still some dragon's breath on the ground. I quickly chugged the fire resistance potion that was in my inventory to get an empty bottle, but the breath was already gone. Then I went to get the dragon egg, but as soon as I punched it, the egg dropped into the portal. That was going to be pretty annoying to find later. But who cares? I was ecstatic. Now that I'd freed the end, I took a celebratory moonwalk out of the dimension and back into the overworld, looking forward to the short walk home. I started to watch the credits, but then remembered that nobody watches the credits and quickly skipped them. And that's around the time that I realized I wasn't in the end portal room in the stronghold. Even though I did put down that ugly purple bed, I must have forgotten to set my respawn. I'd lived this long in hardcore, so I guess I was due for some sort of super noob moment. Luckily, I did write down the coords for the portal room when we were exploring the stronghold. Unluckily, it was over 2,000 blocks away and the sun was going down. I didn't have a bed or time to hide out for the night, so I decided to risk it. I'd made it this far, right? I took off running and made a point of killing every sheep I saw along the way, which was difficult because I was also trying to dodge all the hostile mobs that were trying to put an end to this whole adventure of ours. About halfway home, I finally got my third piece of wool, crafted a bed, and went to sleep. That made the rest of the journey so much easier. I did pass a snowy village along the way, but I didn't have any desire to explore it. Someone else would have to take up the mantle as protector of that town. Eventually, I got to the coordinates of the portal room, but it was all the way down at Y level 0, so I did a safety dig by standing between 2 blocks and minding my way down. Then I came to that cave that we saw before, put down some water, and continued from there. Finally, I plopped down into the portal room and gathered all the things I wanted to keep from the chest. Then I made my way back up to the surface. Now it was time for the victory lap I was actually expecting to do earlier. I took my time on my way back home. After accomplishing all my goals, I wasn't in any kind of rush at this point. As I crested the hill to my village and the sun was going down to close out day 98, I took a look around, greeted my dogs, and then quickly went inside for a well-deserved sleep. On the morning of day 99, 29, I felt super accomplished. We completed all of our goals from the beginning of the video, and it was time to celebrate. The first thing I wanted to do was bake a cake. Unfortunately, I was low on iron and still needed one more bucket. We went back down to the lush cave area and were able to find some iron and coal pretty quickly. I went back to the village, made some buckets of milk, and gathered some sugar cane. That's when I realized I was missing a key ingredient for cakes. How have I gone this long in the world without picking up a single egg? I went to the forest behind my house, and before long I saw an egg sitting on the ground near some chickens. I went back and crafted our celebratory cake. I figured we could have a piece with the dogs once we got to day 100, and then I went to bed. As the sun crested the hill on day 100, I woke up and went outside. I figured cake would be the perfect breakfast, so I took a piece and left the rest for the dogs. They deserved it. I then wanted to build some sort of monument for my time on this world, and I figured the area right next to the frozen lake where we first entered this village was the perfect place. I framed my first wooden pickaxe and axe, the OP enchanted book we found in the Stronghold library, and that ugly purple bed that caused us so many issues. Finally, I placed the dragon egg at the top of the monument and took a step back. I climbed up to the top of our tower and looked around, remembering all the crazy times we've had on this world. Thank you so much for watching, and since this was the first time I'd done anything like this, it took me much longer than I expected. If you want to support the video, the best way to do that is by leaving a like or a comment. It really does help. If you want to stay up to date on my videos, the best way to do that is by hitting that little subscribe button. I'm currently working on a Let's Play series called Tater's World, a vampire hardcore series, and I stream every once in a while from the Ascension SMP. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. See ya.